Hello and welcome back, adventurers. This is Captain TTRPG, and today we're talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
Welcome back, adventurers, and today we're talking about striking, the multiple attack penalty, and degrees of success. All right, this is very exciting because for anybody who's coming from a different system, you may not have had anything like this, and especially those coming from D&D 5e, this really changes the way that you look at your roles. For most players I've GM'd for, and myself included as a player, when I first jumped into TTRPGs, I was just here to fight some monsters. I want to kill some dragons. That's what I was here to do. I think a lot of people are looking for the same thing. We're going to get into the basics of how you do that with weapons and some of the spells while we talk about strikes. So what is a strike? Well, if you've watched my basic actions video, you'll know that a strike is one of those basic actions. It's how you attack. It is you using some sort of weapon or potentially a spell with the right roll to try to attack a creature and targeting their AC or armor class. This works in a few ways. We've got different types of weapons, but generally speaking, you're either walking right up to a creature or attacking from a further range by making a d20 roll, adding in some modifiers, and checking against that AC that's listed for them. When we talk about melee weapons, this could be things like axes and swords, or it could be your fist, maybe you've got a tail, any kind of thing called an unarmed strike. These are various melee weapons. There are ranged unarmed strikes, by the way, but we won't worry about that right now. And usually, you need to be standing in a square adjacent to the enemy. Now there's little rules here and there. We're not going to worry about them right now. But you stand adjacent to a creature, and then you say, I'm going to make a strike action. At this point, you simply roll your d20, add your attack modifier, and see if it's at least as high as or higher than the creature's AC. If you do happen to have a weapon with the reach property on it, and we'll talk about weapon properties in a different video, that'll tell you how far away you can stand, and you can be further, so you don't have to be in an adjacent square. But melee weapons means that you're within a certain distance, usually in an adjacent square, making a strike. Nice and simple. We'll talk about all those modifiers in a bit, and I'll give an example. Ranged strikes are calculated in a similar way. You're going to be rolling a d20 and comparing it while adding your modifiers, comparing it again to the AC. Only these are weapons that are a specific type where they have a range increment listed. So for a short bow, I'm going to go with 60 feet. I'll look that up and put it in some text here if I'm wrong. And that means that, just like we've talked about before, you take all of your modifiers, you add it to your d20 roll, and compare to the AC if it's within that first range increment. If it's further than that, you can still strike up to 2 more range increments away, but you're going to take some penalties based on the distance. Just saying that you get less accurate if they're further than your base range increment. So you can still do that. Also, in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, if you want to stand right next to somebody and shoot at them with your bow, have fun. If it's within your first range increment, you're completely fine to do so. Be careful. Some creatures could attack you while you shoot them with a bow in that way, but you're welcome to do it. It does not harm your accuracy. And if you want to shoot somebody, again, in those further range increments, you will take a penalty, but you can still attack them as long as they're within up to 2 more range increments beyond the initial. So short bow, if it's in fact 60, then at one, you can still shoot somebody up to 120, even 180 feet away. You're just going to take a big penalty to those attack rolls. And the last kind here is spell attack rolls. Lots of spells call for saving throws, if they're going to affect enemies at all. But some do ask for an attack roll, and it could be either a ranged spell attack roll, or it could be all the way up in melee. So if it's a melee spell attack roll, it's going to work a lot like using an unarmed strike, only using your spell casting modifiers for the attack roll. If it's going to be ranged, it'll feel like shooting a bow, only, unlike a bow, spells can't go beyond the listed range. So there's no, hey, if the spell says 60 feet, I can still hit somebody 120 with less accuracy. You're just going to that 60 feet. So a little bit of a difference there, but pretty much the same as the other types of strikes. So that's how attacking works on the surface. Pathfinder 2nd Edition has something called the multiple attack penalty, which, if you've heard stuff about the system, you've probably heard about this. This is their way of letting people attack as many times as they want, all the way from level 1, not needing any special feature to do so, but no matter what level you are, if you want to hit more than once on a turn, it's going to get less likely. So what is this? The multiple attack penalty says, if you're going to use some action with the attack trait, strike being one of these, the most basic, then on the second and every subsequent attack, you're going to take a penalty to your accuracy. The multiple attack penalty works in a way that your second attack will have a -5 to its total, and your third and anything beyond that has a -10. So if you somehow manage 5 attacks, your fifth attack is still only at -10. Now it's -5 and -10 in most cases. If you're attacking those second and third attacks with a weapon with the agile trait, that's a very special weapon trait, then it changes it to, instead of being -5 and then -10, to being -4, -8. So that can make you a little bit more accurate if you're using agile weapon. They usually don't hit as hard and do as much damage with their damage dice, but they can be really useful if you're planning on attacking more than once in a turn. I think it's time for an example. So let's pop over here and let's look at an example of what this looks like in play. Okay, you are a gnome barbarian at level 1. It's your first turn in combat. You went into a rage as a free action when your turn started. You stride up to the nearest enemy. You swing your mighty great axe with a +7 attack modifier. It's +7 because you have a +4 in your strength, because it's your primary ability. A +2 because you're trained using your great axe, and a +1 because you're level 1. That adds up to a 7. You roll a 10 on the d20 when you attack, and you get a total of 17. GM lets you know that you hit the creature, which means that the creature had somewhere between an AC of 17 and 8. We'll explain that 8 in a little bit. So as long as your number's within that range, it's a strike. Great. Means you hit with that attack. You rolled your d12, because a great axe is a d12 damage die weapon. Adds 4 from your strength and some amount of rage damage, depending on what kind of barbarian you are. Cool, that's a good first hit. It's a lot of damage. Well, you want to attack again. The creature's still standing, so you strike again using your third action. This time, you roll your d20, but only add +2, not +7, to your attack roll. Why? Because the +7, all the modifiers still add up the same, but your multiple attack penalty says -5 to your hit chance. This time, you couldn't roll high enough, though you rolled a 12 on the dice. Oh well, still got one good hit in. Well, it just so happens that the rogue, who's right here with you, right next to the opponent, is ready to attack as well. Because the rogue was already here, not having to move, the rogue decides, I'm just going to go ahead and attack 3 times on my turn. Now the rogue's wielding a dagger. This is a finesse and agile weapon, so because of that agile, it changes the penalty. The first strike is with a +7 for the same reasons as yours, as the barbarian. They just use dexterity instead of strength, but same idea. On the second strike, it means they have a +3 on their chance to hit, because they only take a -4 from the multiple attack penalty. And finally, their third attack is at a -1 attack modifier. This is because, again, the dagger has an agile trait, so it goes down by 4 each time. He might only land 1 as well as the barbarian, or could be all 3 depending on the rolls, but is going to have slightly better chance of hitting on those subsequent attacks than the barbarian. So hopefully after that example, you feel good about the multiple attack penalty. Now we need to talk about degrees of success, because I did mention the 17 AC down to 8, but what happens when suddenly you're rolling a total of 17 and they have only a 7 AC? So your roll is 10 greater than their AC. This is where we get into critical strike territory. So 4 degrees of success in Pathfinder are critical success, success, failure, and critical failure. And these all work on a +10, -10 system, which is to say, when you're trying to achieve some number, in this case, attack against an AC, success happens when you meet that level, right? I rolled a total of 17 against an AC of 17. Success. Critical success is when I'm 10 greater. I got a total of 27 on my dice roll, and modifiers all added together, and your AC was 17. Critical success, and we'll talk about what that does. Failure means I got a total of maybe 16. I'm underneath that AC. Okay, I failed to hit. And a critical failure would be all my numbers added together got a total of 6. Yeah, because they had 17 AC. 6, which means I'm 10 below, which that's not great, and I have critically failed. Now, there's no special outcome for critical failure on a strike, even though lots of checks in this system do have critical failure outcomes. Strike is one of the few that doesn't. So what does that mean when you get a critical strike using a strike action? It means that you don't just roll your normal damage. You take all of the damage you did get, so your dice you would normally roll, any modifiers you get to add on to that, you put it all together, and then double that to make the new total. This is very potent, and it's much stronger than systems like D&D 5e, where all you do is roll twice as many dice. This is doubling any bonuses you get, which makes it very, very strong. This goes both ways, both player characters and monsters. Again, critical failures don't do anything special, so nothing to talk about on that side, but it makes critical successes very, very powerful. You might think, if you're coming from D&D though, okay, this +10, -10 system makes sense. What about rolling a 20 or a 1? Does that no longer play a role? It does. Only the roll of the d20 on a 20 or a 1 is still a little bit different. Rather than a 20 being an automatic critical success and a 1 being an automatic critical failure, a 20 means I get one level of success higher than what my total says. And a 1 means I get 1 degree of success lower than what it says. That might sound confusing. Let's do another example. So this one's much shorter. Let's say that you're still that level 1 barbarian, and you have a +7 to your chance to hit, and you're going to fight a level 7 dragon of some kind. This dragon has an AC of, let's say, 28. Thanks to your +7 to hit chance, you don't have any chance of rolling high enough to actually hit this dragon. Even a natural 20, add that in there, that's only 27. That's still a failure. But thanks to the degree of success increase rule for rolling a 20, if you totaled to a failure and you rolled a 20, you still get a success. Hooray, you still get to hit that dragon and deal some damage. Not critical damage, but at least you get to hurt it. And this works the other way as well. If for some reason you would have, with a roll of a 1, still managed to succeed on a strike, because you rolled a 1, you now fail instead. So these do work in that way, and most of the time when you roll a 20 on an attack for a strike, you're going to get a critical success, and most of the time when you roll a 1, you will get a critical failure, just trying to show off the cases that aren't as straightforward. So because this was a little bit longer video and some of the topics required a little more to pay attention to, I want to make sure to pull this back a bit and make it easy, a little wrap up at the end. So when you strike, you make an attack against a creature's AC. All the modifiers for attacking plus the dice roll, as long as it's at least equal to the number for the creature's AC or above, you're going to do some damage. To hit, you need an attack total that is the creature's AC. Keep that in mind. You just need to make sure to meet that number. I know that sometimes gets confusing. What if it's the same as the AC? As long as you meet that number, you're good. You get a penalty to your chance to hit with successive attacks called the multiple attack penalty. Normally -5, then -10. If you have an agile weapon, -4, then -8. And there are 4 degrees of success for almost everything you do in Pathfinder. Critical success, success, failure, critical, failure. And critical hits deal double the total base damage from an attack you succeed on, not just doubling the damage dice. And that's it for today. How do you feel about the multiple attack penalty and the degrees of success in Pathfinder 2e? I love them. I hope you find them interesting too. I hope this helped you and it'll help you run your games and play the game yourself. And with that in mind, adventure on.